Good Monday morning. Today we're going to continue our GraphQL journey a little bit. We are going to look at lazy fetching, which I misspelled to fetching. We are also going to talk about API aggregation. My notes game is not good today. What I mean by API aggregation is the concept of having a bunch of different APIs in your backend. Some are yours, some are third-party APIs, and combining them into one nice API that your client can consume, and that is API aggregation. Lazy fetching and API aggregation, that is today's episode. I am your host, MPJ, and you are watching Fun Function. Okay, so last week we built a GraphQL frontend that wrapped the Goodreads API. You can find it at mpj/GraphQL Goodreads if you want to follow along. I won't check it out right now because I have it checked out. It's a very simple app. It's just this very minimalistic Express app and this schema here, the schema file, which is basically all of the logic. It fetches this Goodreads endpoint with this hard-coded API key that I have to create a new one now since I evicted that after the last episode. And also it defines these types, which does the resolving itself, like pointing which XML node maps to what GraphQL node. It's a very standard GraphQL example. You can check out the entire process of how we created it by clicking there to last week's episode. All right, so I promised you that we were going to talk about lazy fetching, and let's have a look at the data that we're getting from Goodreads at the moment. Let me increase the font size. Have they changed the hotkeys? They have changed the hotkeys. This makes things trickier for me. Okay, zoom in, keep zooming in. Zoom in more. Okay, thanks. And now I have to reposition the window. Oh my god, this is very exciting. Entertainment for you. Very good. Wow, I'm such an amazing video producer. Okay, so if we scroll down here, we see here that we are accessing this endpoint here. We are showing an author. That is what we're querying for. And let's have a look at what the data that we are getting from this endpoint actually looks like. So this is the author's endpoint result. Has a name here, good. Tim O'Reilly, and it has an ID and it has some images and stuff, you know, the things that you would expect, where the author was born and stuff like that. And he was born in Cork. Anywho, what I want to draw your attention to is that this endpoint also includes books. It also includes all the author's books, and it's not just their IDs or anything, it's just their complete books, all of them. And this is not an incorrect design decision per se, but it is a peculiar one because it means that you are fetching a lot of data every time you request an author. And normally I would say that most APIs don't do this. They would instead give you the author and then a couple of IDs or like minimal data for each book. So normally you would have to asynchronously fetch every book. So we are going to pretend that the Goodreads API didn't have these books. We're going to pretend that we're only getting these IDs, because that is a common scenario in when dealing with the REST API. And we're going to lazily fetch these books, these extra books, if the data requires it, if our query requires us to do so. If we need the books, if we have requested the books, GraphQL will fetch the books. Otherwise, we won't fetch the books. Lazy fetching time! I think I did it. Let me walk you through this code that I created. All right, so if you look here in the left hand corner, you see where the additions of my code are. So here in the resolve method, or resolve function of the books field, I've changed this to start fetching stuff instead in the author type. So we now have an inner fetch here, just like we have this outer fetch here that fetches the author in the query, in the big query schema. So we have a nested fetch here. And what this will do is that first it will grab whatever it has from its parent XML data here, and it will extract out the ID, or the IDs actually. So this is such a disgusting syntax, but again, this GraphQL is often about wrapping imperfect APIs, so I wanted a nasty API. So you saw some fiddling around there from my part, and just to remind you about what the results look like. Let me go back to the authors endpoint, actually, author show, and have a look at this here. Where are the books? So we get this array of book elements here, and then we want to extract this ID here, and due to some thing with the XML parser library that I use, I have to do this. It's not important to this particular episode of GraphQL. This is just how the whatever it's called, XML to JS works. So let's just deal with that and live with that. Either way, we extract an array of IDs, and for every ID we do a fetch, and we do the whole dance again. Fetch, extract the text, and then parse the XML of that, and then we return that to promise.all. So this map here, it will return an array of promises, and promise.all will return a single promise that resolves when all those promises are resolved. And that will then eventually be passed into each book type. So before, book type got like this little, it got this element here from the author's endpoint. But now we have changed it so that we are actually fetching from the books endpoint. Hang on, book show, and we're fetching the book, and that means that it has a Goodreads response, a request, and now the book object is here. So we had to change that a little bit by adding this thing here and also extracting the book here. Earlier, I think it was just this. Yeah, right. But now it's this. And all this is happening lazily. So let me show you. Let me add a console log here in the just before the fetch, and see if we like fetching books, and restart the node server and go back to the GraphQL, and I'm going to play now, and it should say fetching books in the console log. But if I remove books here, and play, it will actually not show any fetching books. So let me bring back books, play, you'll see fetching books. So it only does this request if you have actually requested it in the GraphQL query. And this is all automated for you. This is handled by the GraphQL tooling, which is very nice, I think. One thing that is a little bit annoying, that I found a little bit annoying with this tooling, you probably noticed it if you paid attention during my speed coding there, that I had a lot of had some debugging to do, and that is because the GraphQL, this tooling here, swallows errors and does not give you good debugging information, which is a very, very bad combination. Nasty. Let me demonstrate how that worked. I'm introducing an error here and restarting the server and run the query again. And you see, like, I get cannot read property 0 undefined. Okay, where is that error? Because it has swallowed my error here. It doesn't crash or anything. It says on line 5, column 7. Perhaps I guess that it refers to the GraphQL query instead, like this line. Yeah, probably. Okay. So it gives a code error, but it refers to an error, like a line in the GraphQL. So that threw me for, that confused me a bit, because this is line 19 and this, okay. So, okay, then I can figure out that, okay, it's regarding the title because it's on line 5. Then I can see that, okay, I probably made a mistake in this resolver here. Okay, fine, I can fix that and restart it. But honestly, I don't like this error swallowing. Hopefully there's a way to turn that off. Maybe that's the setting in the Express GraphQL library or something. I don't know. If you know, please comment down below. But other than that, I think that the developer experience of this thing is magnificent. It's so easy to work with. Pretty much all of my fiddling around was related to not understanding XML to JS, really. So it's just, I really like this. Let's commit that, and then we're going to take a little break. As you might know, this show, Fun Function, is sponsored by CircleCI. I'm really happy that I'm able to have a sponsor like CircleCI. They are really nice people that I've met in real life. They have a really solid, good product that I use myself and that I feel really good about recommending to you. CircleCI provides continuous integration as a service. If you're interested in what continuous integration is, what it's good for, and how to get started, you should check out the video I made on that here. You don't have to do it now, I will remind you again at the end of this episode. Alright, let's continue. I talked a little bit before, I promised you that we were gonna do some API aggregation. And the way I want to demonstrate this is by welding in the Google Translate API here to give us badly translated book titles. So the way I want to do this is that I want to be able to specify language Portuguese here. Or maybe like that. That's the way, and I want to get this title translated into bad Portuguese. Alright, I'm going to attempt this now! let's walk through what I did. So the thing is, the first thing I did was I went to YouTube, Google my own monad tutorial, and I grabbed some code to translate strings using the Google Translate API. So this is how it works. You just have an API key you can get so by going there and fiddling around like hell, because Google Cloud is extremely annoying when you have many projects and stuff. Hopefully you won't have this problem unless you have a lot of Google Cloud projects, but then you know how to fiddle with them. Anyway, once you have your API key, you go and create this URL to do the request, which is to Google API / translate, pass in the API key, the language, which we specify as an argument here, and then we URI encode a string, and then we just fetch that and parse out the translated text from the response. All right, so that's the translate function. Let's jump down back to the new resolve function that we have defined in the book type schema. What I've added here is that before we just had the XML thing, but now I've added args here. So what is args? Where does that come from? Let's have a look at the query. Args is now this thing here. So we now have the arguments lang here, and we're pressing in Portuguese. And this will be accessible to us here. So we check if there is a language. And if so, we call the translate function with the language and the title that we have extracted here. Just this is exactly the same thing as before. And if we have no language, we just fall back to the title. So you see here that we can either return something that is like a asynchronous title, or we can return a promise. The translate thing will yield a promise. So this is really flexible. So again, let me just go back to the query and change this to Swedish. And let's say play. Let's see what we get. Oh, that's actually not as bad of a translation as I thought. I was okay. This is weird. All right, fair enough. Oh, yep. Cool. Yeah, that works. Let's try German. How do you, is that DE? Das schwarze Swan. Yeah, all right, cool. That works. And of course, if I just do English here, this will actually not hang on. No, sorry, we can't do English. No? What does that work? Oh yeah, because I can't just do EN, I guess I have to do English, EN, US or something. Is it like that? Does that work? No, I have no idea. That doesn't matter. But what I wanted to demonstrate is that if I just use title, this thing, it won't actually execute. It won't actually go away and do translation. So again, it's lazy, and it's mangling together APIs in a pretty cool way, I think. And that is it for today. We have looked at lazy fetching using GraphQL, and we did it a little bit in the context of API aggregation, where we mangled together the Goodreads API and the Google Translate API in a way that it was pretty cool, if I may say so myself. You have just watched an episode of Fun Function. I release these every Monday morning 0800 GMT. But if you are watching from the future, you don't have to wait until next Monday morning. You can check out next week's episode immediately by clicking here. And again, thank you CircleCI for sponsoring this show. Continuous integration is so important, and it's much easier to get started with than you think. Check out the continuous integration playlist here. I am MPJ. Until next Monday morning, stay curious.